So I want to transition to the NBA and the Portland Trail Blazers. So Damian Lillard came out yesterday or 2 days ago, and there were reports seem to suggest that he wants to play with Ben Simmons. Now, the Portland Trail Blazers at a whole, let's just be honest about their organization right now. They're 11 and 14 in the Western Conference, 10th in the conference, or actually, yeah, they're 10th in the Western Conference, but they're only 2 games out of the 5th place seeding in the conference. So they're right now slightly below 500, but this kind of accurately reflects who they have been over the last 6-7 years under this nucleus of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. A slightly above average, slightly above 500 team. And unfortunately, this does accurately reflect the record that they have posted under those two individuals' stewardship. That's not that shocking to me, their record right now. Because again, when you look at historically who they've been over the last 6 years, this kind of adds up. 2015, 2016, that was the first true season that Damian Lillard was the guy and CJ McCollum was his backcourt mate. They were 44 and 38, which is 54% wins on the season. They lost to the Warriors in the first round. Both of them played well, but they weren't enough. 2016, 2017, they were 500 on the season, 41 and 41. They won 50% of their games. They were swept by the Warriors in the first round. They both played well, but they didn't get enough help. 2017, 2018, they were 49 and 30 and 33. That was a pretty good season. They were winning 60% of their games, but they were swept by the New Orleans Pelicans in the first round. CJ actually played well. Damian Lillard struggled. 2018, 2019, that was the best year that they had. 52 and 20, 53 and 29, 65% win percentage. They were the third seed. They reached the conference finals for the first time in years, but they were swept by the Warriors in the conference finals. No shame in that. Both of them played extremely well, but they weren't enough. 2019, 2020, that's when they lost in the bubble to the Lakers as the 8th seed. But the fact that they were even an 8th seed at the time seemed a bit preposterous given the other teams in the Western Conference outside of the Clippers that season really didn't pose a huge threat. So we thought this would be an opportunity for the Blazers to move up in the rankings. And then last year, they were the 6th seed. They were 42 and 30. They won 58% of their games. And they were the 6th seed. They lost to the Denver Nuggets without Jamal Murray. And Damian Lillard played well. CJ McCollum struggled. So right now, they're 11 and 14. They're right in the middle of the pack. And it's not Chauncey Billups' fault either. I actually think that Chauncey Billups is going to be an excellent head coach. None of that's shocking to me. What's shocking to me is that in years past, Damian Lillard always played his role, and it was the supporting cast that was not enough. This year, the onus falls on Dame because he's been atrocious by his own standards. His level of play this year in comparison to years past, it has just been substandard and below par. This is a guy who this year is averaging 21.5 points per game, his lowest mark since his 3rd year in the NBA. He's averaging 4 rebounds and 8 assists. That's good. But his field goal percentage, like 39.7% from the floor, 30% from the three-point line. Those are the 2 worst percentages from the field and from the three-point line of his career. Not to mention, he's 2nd in PER, not behind CJ McCollum, but behind Norman Powell. That can't happen. He's got to have the ball the majority of the time in his hands. But ever since the Olympics, he's been struggling mightily. I mean, even in the Olympics, he struggled mightily. And I think that the offseason, his future, the future direction of the Portland Trail Blazers, vacillating over whether or not to give Chauncey Billups a chance, really starting to weigh his options about his own future in Portland. I think all of this has really been kind of eviscerating his insides and afflicting him emotionally in a way that he hasn't been able to endure before. Because this is the first time that he's not only truly playing poorly, but I think the cause of the poor play is because of the mental struggles that he's dealing with right now, is the fact that he's carrying this cumbersome load and it's taking a toll on him mentally. This is the first time we're actually showing, or that he's actually showing, cracks in the armor. Not as far as the record, as far as his own play. And that's been the difference between this year and in seasons past, is the Blazers could be an average team, an average organization, but he always did his part. He was playing like an all-star. He was a bona fide superstar. This has not been the same Damian Lillard that we've seen for the first 8 years of his career. And that's the difference. And that's why all these problems have been accentuated and illuminated to the forefront. And that's why he's even more frustrated, is because he's not playing well. And he's always been unsure about this organization over the last couple of years and whether or not this is where he wants to finish. And so that's the problem, is you exacerbate your own personal dilemma and you juxtapose that to your own struggles on the basketball court. And what does it equate to? It equates to slightly below 500. So I think that he loves Portland and wants to finish his career, but I think that this is requesting to play with Ben Simmons at this point is one last-ditch effort to try and rectify the situation, to try to move ahead one more season with the core of Lillard, Nurkic, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, and Ben Simmons, because obviously CJ McCollum would be traded in this instance. And at this point, I think if you're the Portland Trailblazers, if that's something that hypothetically the Philadelphia 76ers are willing to entertain, let's just say hypothetically, let's assume that they're willing to trade Ben Simmons for CJ McCollum and maybe a pick, some combination, some package around CJ McCollum for Ben Simmons. I think that the Portland Trailblazers, you do that in a second, because you see that you're not going anywhere right now. And unfortunately, CJ McCollum now just suffered a collapsed lung. I'm wishing him a speedy recovery. He's out indefinitely, not sure how long he's going to be gone for, but that's just the latest setback and hardship that now Lillard's got to deal with. And it's not like the Philadelphia 76ers are crushing it in the East. They're 13-11 right now. So they could use, and they're getting nothing right now out of Ben Simmons. So it's only going to be an addition if you add CJ McCollum into the mix. And the Blazers, it's not like their offense was so prolific with CJ. They were 13th in the NBA in offensive efficiency. And defensively, they had the worst defensive rating in the NBA. They were 26 in points allowed. So those stats are only going to improve when you add Ben Simmons, one of the best and first team NBA players, to your roster, especially under the guidance and leadership of Chauncey Billups. That's the perfect guy to mold into a defensive system. So from the Blazers' perspective, if that's something the 76ers are willing to do at this point, you might as well go ahead and do it, because perhaps that might alleviate some of the external pressures that Damian Lillard is feeling, because I don't think this is the Damian Lillard that we will continue to see forever. I think that this is a one-off, and he's just struggling. He has been dealing with an internal battle this entire year. It's an embattled organization. They are operating with a de facto GM. Neil O'Shea was just fired, and he's dealing with an organization that lacks a future, or at least appears to be lacking any foresight as to what the direction is of the organization. And to make matters worse, Lillard wants to be extended this offseason, sign a $107 million extension, and that would ostensibly gut the entire team. And yet the Blazers are trying to hire a new general manager, and all the prospects are reticent to take the job because they don't want to feel this obligation to sign Lillard, when in reality, they'd prefer to move Lillard and completely start anew and start fresh, as opposed to quasi start fresh by signing Damian Lillard to $50 million a year. So I think that Ben Simmons would work in Portland. I've discussed that trade for months since I knew that Ben Simmons was disgruntled and wasn't going to be returning to the 76ers, which he hasn't. That was the trade that made the most sense to me, that I thought both teams could benefit from. They would just have to swallow their pride a little bit on the Philadelphia side. That's the trade that I would go with. Is it going to result in a championship for the Portland Trail Blazers? No, I don't think so. But it's worth a try. At this point, it's worth a try. It can only be a positive at this point. And I know that Lillard and McCollum are buddies and it's personal, but I don't think that CJ McCollum would have too much of an issue, would take too much of an issue to Damian Lillard just saying, listen, man, I'm sorry, this is what I got to do. Because unfortunately, that's the only way I see him succeeding at all in Portland. Otherwise, they're just going to have to completely gut the team and change it up.